perder. De la disco pa'l motel, más mala que Anabel. Baile y todo le hacen coro, te deja marcado como el zorro. No pierdo mi tiempo, es oro, todo me lo gasto, no ahorro. चीज बनाई दूध पे जैसे आई हमारा चिटी चिटी बैंग बैंग चिटी कलाई तेरी आग लगा दे जैसे दिया सलाई मैं इंटरनेशनल तेरे गाने मेरा लोको तू है सिक बाकी है सोसो मैं तेरा काका तू मेरी कोको लड़की कितनी जो मेरे रोटी भागती तू किस आज की हाथ लगाओ देखे ऐसे जैसे काटे के लड़की पागल है पागल है पागल है पागल है
Jainendra, and thank you all so much for joining us today on YJA's webinar on navigating college life. My name is Vanshika Shah, and I'll be one of your hosts today. I am a rising junior at the University of Maryland studying bioengineering, and I'm the current YJA Mid-Atlantic Regional Coordinator. And joining me today are Suryaraj Jain and Rohan Gala, who will be today's co-hosts.
Jai Jain there, everybody. My name is Suryaraj. I am a graduate of George Mason University, studied in information systems and operations management, currently working as a support engineer at SAP Concur. I'm also the current director of publications for YJA, so don't hesitate to ask any questions about anything I just said.
Hey, Jainendra, everyone. I'm Rohan, and I'm currently attending the University of Pennsylvania, studying finance at Wharton and biology as part of the Vagelos program in life sciences and management, as well as the college chapter's co-lead. Our session tonight will be structured into 5 parts. In the first half hour, we will touch on the application process. Afterwards, we'll discuss transitioning from high school to campus life, ways to get involved on campus, pre-professional opportunities you can pursue while in college, and how to stay connected to Jainism while in college.
Afterwards, we will set up breakout rooms for you to interact with and ask questions to our various panelists we have here today. And finally, we'll have a feedback form open so we can get your thoughts and comments, anything you'd like to share with us. So certainly please fill that out as well. So I'll hand it off to you, Rohan.
Thank you. One of the biggest challenges for high school students going to college is approaching the application process. Coming from personal experience, it can be very daunting to open the Common App for the first time. Today, we're lucky enough to have 2 great panelists who are going to answer some of the common questions any high school student has when applying to college. On our panel, we have Umang and Neela. If you guys don't mind, please introduce yourselves. Umang, do you want to go first?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Umang Vinayaka, and I graduated high school this past year from Capel, which is located in Dallas. I'm going to Harvard next year in the fall, and I'm really excited for that. Obviously, the transition is going to be crazy because I'm going from the heat to the cold. And yeah, in high school, I was heavily involved with debate and research. So if I'm starting to give my responses in a very debatey format, that's the reason why.
That's great. Neelam, do you want to go next?
Sure. Jainism, everyone. My name is Neelam Savla, and I use she, her pronouns. I am calling in from Los Angeles, California, where I work as an admission counselor at the University of Southern California, USC. I have been in the admissions field for the last 10 years, and I am currently serving as the director of admission for our School of Cinematic Arts. So happy to answer any questions folks have about the admissions process. I've been on the other side. I read applications. I see what you all are submitting as prospective students. And so happy to be here.
That's awesome. So let's start off with a question most prospective students have. Neelam, what factors should students consider when choosing a college or university, and how really can they determine the best fit for their academic and personal goals?
Yeah, absolutely. Really, you want to think about everything, and that feels daunting in and of itself, but think of it in the sense of you are choosing a place to get an education, but more often than not, you are also choosing a place where you will be living for several years. And so you want to be thinking about things like, where do you want to be? Umang was mentioning earlier, kind of going from the heat to the cold. And as trivial as that might sound, that might be something that is important to someone, right? So a lot of times the very first things we're thinking about are, okay, what do I want to study? Does this school offer the academic program or a major in the area that I'm interested in? But also thinking about the larger aspects of what a college or university can provide to you. What is that classroom experience like? Are you a big fish in a small pond? Are you a small fish in a big sea? Do you want to be in an environment where you can have really close personal connections with your faculty members, with your peers? Or do you want to be at a big university and have that big school experience? I can keep rattling off a list, and certainly you can find lists online. There's a lot of resources out there that kind of list out these factors that folks want to consider. But I often kind of encourage students to really think about it in the sense of, you're going to live here for 3, 4, maybe 5 years, and you want to be in a place where you can see yourself not just going to class, but also thriving and enjoying the experience. And so you really want to think about all of those things that are important to you. And as you go through the college search process, it's just as important to think about the things that are not important to you. Maybe you realize you don't actually want to be in a college town. You would much rather be in a city experience. Great. Now you know that, and you can focus your search on institutions that fall within that realm. So think about the things that are important to you. Think about the things that you really want in a college experience, and on the flip side, things that maybe you don't want, and have that help you kind of hone in on what universities to consider.
Yeah, definitely. There's that duality between living and studying when you're applying to college. For our second question, Umang, as someone who just successfully went through the standardized testing process, in your opinion, how should students best approach standardized testing? And do you have any tips for studying for these tests?
Yeah. So firstly, stop stressing, because those tests are not as important, especially anymore, as a lot of people think they are, especially because after COVID, a lot of schools even made it optional. So it's not something that you need to be stressing over, spending countless hours at night studying, or giving up your schoolwork for that, right? Like the SAT and the ACT can be important, but it's not something that you need to put all your time into, and you need to stop stressing about it. But yeah, practice, right? There are a lot of resources that I use on the internet, right? So there are a lot of practice tests available from College Board itself, a lot of YouTube help. I used YouTube a lot. So every time there's a concept that I didn't understand, my first go-to was YouTube. Khan Academy. Try to get practice on things that you struggle with, right? So it's very easy. It's I did this a lot in the beginning, right? I was really good. I was stronger on math and weaker in reading and writing. So what I would do is when I would tell my parents that I'm practicing, I'd spend time doing math problems, even though that's the part that I'm stronger in, and I need to work on reading and writing. So notice that you're doing that and start working on the things that you're actually struggling with, so that the time you do study, you're using it efficiently instead of just doing things you're already strong at. And create a list that you struggle with. That's really important, because usually these tests are very similar every single time. And so for me, I was getting the same types of questions wrong every single time, every single practice test I took. So notice that and only focus on those types of things instead of taking a whole test again just so that you could get the same questions wrong, right? Use what those practice tests teach you and drill yourself on the questions that you're actually getting wrong so that you don't have to work so much. You don't have to spend so much time taking those practice tests.
That's some great advice. Let's move on to some more of the specifics. This question is for Neelam. What are some of the common mistakes that students make in their college applications, and how can they avoid them?
Yeah, this is a great question. A couple of things that come to mind. First is just telling us what you want us to know. College admission counselors are not mind readers. If you don't say something in your application, I will have no idea, right? So really take the time to think about what do you want these folks who are reading your application to know about you, and find a way to include it in your application. If you want us to know that you are a good student and you have good grades, great. We're going to see that on your transcript. If you want us to know about these different activities that you're involved with, great. I'm going to see that on the activity summary. As you make this list of what you want colleges to know about you, I always encourage students to kind of check things off as they show up in different parts of your application. And as they show up, then there's some things that are like left over, right? Of something, maybe you had an experience kind of growing up that's really important to you that hasn't shown up anywhere else in your application. Maybe that's something that you choose to write a short answer or an essay about. And so just being open and vulnerable. And I know it feels counterintuitive to what we are taught kind of as children growing up and in this country of we should be humble. And I think especially in our culture, right, of don't brag about yourself. If there's ever going to be a time for you to brag about yourself, it is in the college admissions process. Obviously, be honest about it. Don't be making things up. But I think really being intentional about kind of putting your best foot forward, because the reality is college admission counselors are reading thousands and thousands of applications, and you telling us everything that you want us to know is helping you put your best foot forward. Another common mistake is not reading the instructions, which sounds so basic, but you'd be surprised how often that happens. Obviously, students are applying to several, sometimes dozens of colleges at the same time, and I can go on a whole other kind of TED talk about that. But I think that you want to make sure that you are putting the necessary time and energy into each application that you're choosing to submit. And if you are just going to be copying and pasting responses from one college to another, because you're like, yeah, well, the question is basically the same, I can just copy and paste this over. You really want to be careful about doing that, because we can read through that. We can realize and see, this is not really a specific response to the question that I'm asking at USC. And so you really want to kind of spend some time and be careful about what you're copying and pasting over from one college to another, because we can see through it. So just some words of caution, I suppose.
Yeah, that's definitely important. This next question is for Umang. How many colleges should someone be applying to, and how many safeties, targets, reaches should they look at?
Yeah, so that's a very difficult question to answer because everyone will give you a different answer, right? But I think like the golden number is somewhere between 6 and 12 colleges, because I say that because it's really important to have quality over quantity, because the schools that you are applying for, they're going to have like essays and supplemental like material that you're trying to submit. And if you spread yourself too thin and you're adding like 20 schools or like 17 schools, all of those colleges are going to have their own things that they expect you to do. And you have to imagine what other people are doing at those schools, right? They're putting all of their effort. So if you spread yourself too thin, you're not like sending your best at any of the colleges, which means that none of the colleges are looking at the best potential you, right? So you want to make sure that you limit however many colleges you're applying to so that you can focus on the essays and focus on the material that you're sending so that it's actually really strong when you think about it, right? So look at the things like supplemental essays. How many do they have? Also keep in mind that applying to each college requires $50 to $75 just to apply. So financial burdens might be a thing. You need to look into these things so that when you do end up applying, you're not applying to way too many and it starts hurting the way that you start, like that you show yourself or you present yourself to these colleges. In terms of target, safety, and reach schools, I'd say like 2 safety schools is enough, 2 to 3 reach schools. And can y'all hear me? It just said I got muted.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so like two safeties is enough, 2 to 3 reach schools. and then focus on like the target schools, because those are the schools that you really want to go to, or those are the schools where you have the best chance of going to. So research those schools, spend a lot of time on those, and show who you are to those schools.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I applied to 20 when I was applying, and it was way too much, way too overwhelming. This next question is for Neelam. I mean, you've obviously read many college applications. How can students effectively showcase their extracurricular activities and achievements in their application, and what impact can it have on their admission?
I'm going to answer the second part first. It can have all of the impact. The reality is that many colleges, actually, I'll preface this with saying there's over 4,000 colleges and universities in this country, and more often than not, we are talking about the top 50 or 75 of them. And I was about to kind of fall into that trap myself. But when we talk about colleges and universities, especially in last number of years, the reality is that many of them have very qualified applicants, right? So when I'm looking at students just on the basis of GPA and test score, I'm at a university that practices holistic admissions. And so I don't have a cutoff GPA or a cutoff test score that I'm looking for. Someone with a 3.7 is probably going to be just as fine as someone with a 4.0 at USC at the end of the day, right? And so when you can't really decipher between the academic components, we turn to the qualitative components. And for me personally, as well as many of my colleagues, the qualitative pieces is really where we are spending the vast majority of our time, and really trying to understand what kind of a student, what kind of a person is this individual, and how will they fit into our college campus. So in terms of showcasing and effectively showcasing your achievements, your extracurricular activities, again, it goes back to that first question of just like, tell us what you did. If you don't tell us that you were involved in X, Y, and Z, that always is just kind of a red flag. If a student didn't list kind of their activities on their activity summary, but then the counselor is talking about being involved in all these things in their letter of recommendation, it's like, why didn't the student tell us this? But also, I think quantifying things is also really important. You tell me that you are involved in, if you're involved on the soccer team, let's say, for example, great, cool, you're involved in sport. But if you give more detail and context as to you've been on this team for X number of years, you've led a group of 20 of your peers as a leader, you participated X number of hours each week, whatever the case may be, right? Help quantify things, because being on a soccer team can mean something different at every single high school out there in the country and in the world. It helps us kind of understand the level of your commitment, the level of your involvement. Now, many of college applications help students do that already. I think often of the common application, which on the activity summary, they ask for how many years were you involved? How many hours did you spend a week involved in this activity? But whether you're talking about it on the activity summary, whether you're talking about it in a short answer, in an essay, maybe you're participating in an interview for a college, try to quantify things to really show the impact that you have had on that involvement or that organization. That can really help kind of set it apart from just oh yeah, I was a part of this club. That will help folks on the receiving end really understand kind of, again, what level of involvement did you really have with that organization.
That insight is incredibly helpful. For our final question, Umang, from your perspective, what should a high school junior's priorities be in terms of application right now?
Yeah, so junior year is very stressful, right? Like there's a lot going on, and a lot of people put a lot on their plate, thinking that they need to do everything in the world to show colleges that they are the person that they need to admit. But I think the biggest thing is depth over the amount of things you're doing, right? So don't pick up a bunch of new stuff just because you think that colleges are going to be impressed by it. Be really thorough in the things you are doing, right? So maybe you play tennis, maybe you start coaching tennis over the summer if you have free time. Maybe you go to debate camps, or you coach at debate camps, or you start, if you have an interest in research, you continue research, right? Show depth in the things you're doing and show passion in the things you're doing, instead of picking up a bunch of activities because you're trying to fulfill the number of activities, which is 10, right? You want to show depth instead of breadth. And then beyond just activities, I'd say try not to worry about standardized test scores, because as I guess I mentioned before, they don't matter as much as everyone thinks they do, just because there are a lot of other things that these admissions officers are looking for when they're making that decision. And that's why I'd rather suggest looking at things like recommendation letters, right? good teachers always get like picked really like fast, or a lot of people start like asking these teachers for rec letters really early on in the year, or really like at the end of junior year, right? So you want to ask teachers that like you have a really good like relationship with, that know you beyond just like your grades, that know that you are someone in the classroom that will have that impact, someone who maybe you go to after school every once in a while just to talk about life, right? Those are the teachers that you want to ask, and you want to think about it because those teachers are the most invested, which means that other students might be asking those teachers too, and they get tired too, right? So you want to be one of those people that they think about when they're writing that essay, so they don't use like a template instead of writing like a new recommendation letter just for you. And then the last thing, which I think was helpful for me, is brainstorming ideas for personal statement stuff, right? Because on the Common App, there's one essay at like the summer of junior, there's one essay that goes to all of the colleges that you apply through Common App. And that essay is called the personal statement. And so what I did was over the summer, like from junior year to senior year, I spent some time, like whenever I had free time, just brainstorming a bunch of ideas about what I could write my essay about. And we were talking about this before, but I literally started off my idea list with Taco Bell and how much I love the cheesy gordita crunch. And from there, we slowly made our way to like what I actually ended up writing, ended up writing about. And it takes time to develop that idea. And so just think about those things while in the summer, whenever you have free time, because it does take time to develop and craft that idea and be creative and new about it.
Thank you so much, Umang and Neelam, for all your valuable insight into the application process. Now we're going to shift to the second portion of this webinar. Now that you're done with the hard part of getting into college, now it's time for the important stuff, the college experience. I'm going to hand it off to Vanshika for this.
Thank you so much, Rohan. It was awesome hearing from Neelam and Umang today. But yeah, like Rohan mentioned, let's talk about what it's like to be in college. So the transition from staying at home and living a structured life where your mom would feed you every night to not knowing when you last ate and sleep is a very stark contrast. But don't worry, because Rahi Shah and Ayush Jain are here to tell us a little bit more about how they navigated the campus life without drowning. Rahi, can you start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself? And then Ayush, can you follow?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having us here. My name is Rahi Shah. I use she, her pronouns. I'm originally from Michigan, but I am studying at George Washington University in DC, pursuing a double major in international affairs and political science with a concentration in security policy.
Good evening there, everyone. My name is Ayush Jain. I'm originally from Maryland, and I'm currently a graduate student at Georgia Tech, calling in from the Bay, where I'm currently interning right now. I graduated from my undergrad also in Georgia Tech in material science and engineering in 2021.
Amazing. Well, it's really nice to meet the both of you. So let's get started with some really exciting questions. Ayush, can you describe what transitioning from high school to college was like, especially with you moving to a bigger city for college and having the more college town feel?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. I think the biggest thing was that in college, you have a lot less daily structure than you had in high school, right? You have a lot more freedom, which is great, but it's really easy to lose track of everything because there's always so much going on. You have more involved extracurriculars, your classes are usually more involved too. And it's not like you're living at home, like you said, Vanshika, where, you're getting home cooked food and everything. So I think the biggest thing is like maintain an internal schedule for yourself, right? And this schedule can be specifically like study breaks, where you have meals, because those are really easy to forget, and especially sleep, like using Google Calendar or tools like that can really help you stay on track. And getting to your point about going to college in a city, I personally loved college in a city, and being in a city really energizes me. So kind of touching on what Neelam said, that was a factor in me choosing Georgia Tech as a college. I think the great thing about a city college is that you have that choice of being within the college bubble through your extracurriculars, but you also have opportunities that push you out to network more in a more urban environment and meet more people. And this can help greatly with career opportunities or getting deeper into your extracurricular activities.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that experience, Ayush. I couldn't agree more. Rahi, you have been very involved with so many different extracurricular activities and clubs on campus in just your first year. Would you mind telling us more about on-campus clubs that you were personally involved with, and then in both leadership-wise and what that looked like time commitment-wise, and how you determined that it was something that you wanted to join and continue long-term versus just dropping after the first year?
Yeah, of course. I'd say a lot of colleges have club fairs in the beginning of the year and throughout the year, and they really do help show like all the different opportunities there are on your campus. So I went to one of those right in the beginning of my year. But I'd say one thing that really helps me is just when you get there, there's so many clubs, and it can be really, really overwhelming. So what I did was shortlisted a couple of clubs that just spoke to me from the name or just reading their description, and then going to the club fair to talk to people from the club, see if that club culture, that time commitment was for me or not. As for clubs that I was involved in my freshman year and continue to be involved in, well, first of all, this is kind of funny, but I went into college thinking I was going to be on a dance team. Like that is all I wanted to do. And I went to the club fair finding out that they had 4.5 hour practices 5 days a week. And I just did not have the time to commit to that. But what I did have the time to commit to was 4 different clubs that I ended up being in. I am a part of Phi Alpha Delta, which is a pre-law fraternity on campus. And then 2 other clubs that are more career related: Women in International Security, Women's Pre-Law Student Association, which I was the freshman representative for. And then one club that just spoke to my passions and I made a lot of friends in, which is called GW Persist, but it's an advocacy club and we work on a lot of different political campaigns. So I'd say finding like out what clubs you want to be a part of, it's a lot of different things. You kind of have to prioritize like what you want to get out of the experience. Do you want to use this as a networking opportunity? Do you want to make friends through this club? Is this something you're super passionate about, or are you trying to learn something new? Just trying to figure out what your priorities are so you can join that club. And then just make sure to follow your gut and don't force yourself to join anything that doesn't feel like a good way to spend your time.
Yeah, that's really impressive to hear about all the things that you've been involved with, and really good advice on how to navigate so many college clubs. But speaking of dance teams, Ayush, you were on a Bollywood dance team in college. So being on a dance team can be a huge commitment, like Rahi mentioned, from practices to traveling to competitions. So could you elaborate more on what your experiences were like being on a dance team? How did you balance all of that with your academics?
Yeah, great question. And yeah, that's really funny, Rahi. I was gonna definitely touch on those practices. They add up. But yeah, I guess even like in a broader sense, like be on dance teams or even like, these South Asian groups, I highly recommend clubs in college where you're constantly meeting people and exploring activities that you would not have done before. I think it's a great way to push yourself out of your comfort zone. Now getting into the time commitments for these types of clubs. Definitely know what you're getting into. So like just like Rahi did, like find out how many practices per week, how long those practices go. And typically you want to do this by talking to people on the team. You want to talk to management. And although this always changes from year to year, from school to school, practices can generally take up like 10 hours to up to 30 hours a week, depending on how competitive you want to be. So let's say you figured out that, okay, now you want to get into this dance team and you're now in the full fledged of things, right? How do you manage that with your academics and more importantly, or as importantly, your other extracurriculars, right? So what worked for me was kind of this work hard, play hard mentality, which helped me make more use or more effective use of my breaks. Like, so for example, you're going to have a lot of interruptions to your day. So like, let's say you have 2 or 3 hours between class and when practice starts, you want to use those 2 to 3 hours the most effective way you can. And this will come with time and practice over and over again. But, make sure you focus on classes that you might be struggling in or extracurriculars where you have stuff coming up then. And definitely like make sure that you're getting your meals in, getting your nutrition in, because it can be really physically taxing too. And that's like for day to day. For more long-term planning, typically for dance teams specifically, like fall semesters will be a little bit lighter, spring semesters will be really heavy on traveling and more practices, right? And you'll know when you're traveling typically months ahead of time. So the biggest thing is communication, right? Communication, your commitment to potential extracurriculars or other group projects that you're a part of. And, make sure you're carrying your weight in like all your activities as well. So if you're going to be out for, let's say, I don't know, 2 weeks in March and you're in a group project, like make sure you maybe carry the load a little bit earlier in the project as well. Just for example. And the other thing is like communicate with your team. Also, there's a lot of teams that help develop camaraderie between their members. So definitely take advantage of that. And it'll help build a support system to manage the time.
Nice. Hey, go GT Corbani. Thank you for that really transparent response. I think a lot of people would agree that that's kind of a really good way to go about it. But now for every parent's concern, food. Food is often thought to be one of the biggest challenges in college for Jain kids. Rahi, how did you successfully continue eating a Jain diet, whether it being fully vegan or vegetarian in college? And what are some tips you have for this?
Yeah, definitely. Food being the biggest concern, my mom, every single day when she FaceTimed me, the first thing she asked was, "Did you eat and what did you eat?" So especially living in a city school, I can say like our campus didn't even have a dining hall until this past year. So it was definitely a struggle, especially being vegetarian. But I think what helped me a lot was just sticking to those values that I'd set at home and seeking out, even if it was like the same salad every day, I really made sure that I was communicating with the people in the dining hall once that was set up. And everyone is pretty accommodating. So I think making sure that you are communicating with whoever your dietitian is at your schools, campuses, cafeteria, dining hall, whatever food plan you're on. And then the other thing that really, really helped me before we had our dining hall was just communicating with my friends that I built, because everyone was really, really aware and conscious when it came to my eating as well. So whenever we did eat out, like making sure that there were vegetarian options, but not only like just like vegetarian options that were sides, but making sure that I was having a full healthy meal at wherever we chose to dine that day. And then I'd say also bringing food from home, even being so far away, like I only went home 3 times in the year, but my mom actually like would cook me home cooked meals that I'd pack and then freeze. And that also really helped, especially like if I was having a low day or just wanted home cooked food, I could always heat it up. So that was also really helpful. And then the last thing I'll add to that is talking to seniors at your school, because they've been there for a while. They will know like, oh, are there good restaurants around, or where do they get like their food from? How have they communicated in the past with the dietitians at the dining hall? And that really helped a lot as well.
Yeah, health is wealth. So thank you for those resources. And yeah. And I guess this question's for you, Ayush. Whenever I talk to people from college, they always say that studying abroad was one of the coolest experiences they've ever had. So I know that you actually studied abroad in college. So would love some insight on what that was like and how you navigated applying for a study abroad program and all that jazz.
Yeah. Study abroad. I studied abroad spring semester of my sophomore year, which I now realize was a really long time ago. But yeah, I went to Singapore for that semester, studied at NTU, which is a university there, and definitely one of the best college experiences I've had. I traveled to like 6-7 different countries in Southeast Asia. All my classes were pass-fail that semester, so I had time to do that. And it was a great way to meet like a lot of international friends who I keep in touch with today as well. And yeah, the way that you plan that out is you definitely have to start early on. Like, for example, like I said, I went spring sophomore year. I planned out my study abroad spring freshman year. So I would say like a year to a year and a half in advance. And a lot of, I personally did like a foreign exchange program. So depending on the program that you're in school or your major, you'll have different choices. I chose foreign exchange because it gave me the most freedom to do what I wanted. But again, with that freedom comes cost. Is you need to make sure that the classes that you take abroad at a foreign university transfer back and will actually contribute to your degree so that you can graduate on time, from the university that you're at right now. So definitely talking to different counselors, academic coordinators at your school, and they will give you a lot of insight on how to do that. Also, definitely talking to other people who have studied abroad in your major at your university is a really great way to start. And yeah, I'd be happy to help anyone out through that process if you want to talk about it after as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that insight. I think sometimes it can be a little scary to take the step with study abroad, but I have heard it's really rewarding. All right, well, those were all the questions we had for this segment of the webinar. Thank you for your insightful responses. I think makes the scary thing seem a lot more approachable. So thank you so much, Ayush and Rahi. It was really great to hear from you both about the adjustment to college life and the experiences that were super valuable to you. But now let's talk a little bit about career opportunities that you can take advantage of. So Suryaraj, take it away.
Thank you, Vanchika. Before we move on, just wanted to remind our audience that we have dropped the feedback form in the Zoom chat. So definitely when you guys get a chance just to fill that out, it'll help us out in the future to kind of just understand what we should continue and improve upon for our college webinars. And with that, I totally understand the stress of getting involved in college, but also, finding those career and professional opportunities during college and post-graduation. But today we have 4 panelists who will provide some insight on finding those opportunities. Now, Romit, Megha, Mishi, and Purva, you're all in a very diverse set of career fields. Could the 4 of you just give a brief introduction on your background and where you're currently working? We'll start with you, Romit, and then we'll go Megha, Mishi, and then Purva.
Yeah, JJ Nandra, everyone. My name is Romit. My background, I went to the University of Pennsylvania, where I did my bachelor's and master's in computer science. So basically became a coder. Since then, I have worked in the Bay Area as a software engineer, and currently I live in New York, actually, where I work at Citadel, which is a hedge fund, and I work on the tech side there. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself. Mishi, you want to go?
Sure, I'm happy to go. Hi, everyone. My name is Mishi. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an appellate and Supreme Court attorney in Washington, D.C. A little bit of my background, I went to Rice University in Houston, Texas, and then I went to Stanford Law School not too long ago. And before this job, I was a judicial law clerk for a federal judge in Boston, and I'm happy to talk about any and all of those experiences.
JJ Nandra, I'm Megha. I went to undergrad at William and Mary. I was a chemistry and psychology major. I then went on to medical school at the University of Virginia, and I'm currently an anesthesiology resident doctor at the Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, Ohio.
Awesome. I'm Purva. Hi. I'm going into my junior year at IU Bloomington. I study information systems and supply chain management at Kelly, so not even in the industry right now. Currently, I'm spending my summer in Indianapolis with Rolls-Royce as a business operations intern. So that has been fun, but yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the intros, you guys. You guys touched on a few things that we're going to expand on a little bit here, but I'll start with you, Romit. What sort of internships did you do during your time in college, and how did you find those opportunities, those internships? And do you have any suggestions for future college students who are kind of trying to go towards that similar path you went into?
Yeah. So I guess my freshman year, I actually worked from home. This is before work from home was a thing. And I I worked with the United Nations Association in Philadelphia, but I basically just helped them make a website. It was not like a full-fledged internship. It was kind of just like a job posting that I found through my university. And I kind of took it up as like a summer project because, I didn't want to do it like nothing over the summer. But I also was a little homesick and I did want to kind of spend some time with my family and stuff. I also, pretty honestly, had trouble finding internships as a freshman because most internship programs don't cater to freshmen. And I think I was in a position where everyone kept telling me, hey, don't waste your summer, don't do nothing, either take classes or do something. And I knew I needed a break from studying. So I kind of just I went to the on-campus recruiting thing at my university, talked to a counselor there, and this is where I found hey, here's some postings that they'll probably accept someone who's a kind of freshman in your career, in your, I guess, field. And that's how I found my first internship. And I think this helped me a lot because when I was a sophomore and I was applying for internships, a lot of people would ask me, hey, what did you do last summer? What's your experience? And I think that's kind of hard as a sophomore if you've done nothing the year before. But I think it was good to say, hey, like this is a project I worked on. And I think I realized it would have been fine even if I did my own project the summer before, but as long as I did something and made use of that time. So my sophomore year, I actually worked at a company called IAC. They're the holding group that owns like Match.com, Ask.com, and stuff like that. And that was a great experience in New York. And that kind of then led to me realizing, hey, I wanted to go to the Bay Area and I wanted to kind of explore Silicon Valley, which is what you hear all about when you're in tech growing up. And so my junior year, I really went hard. I went to on-campus recruiting very early, and it very much caters towards rising seniors because they kind of want to prime you for a good internship so you can get a good full-time job. So I think most universities have pretty good resources in that like area when you are a rising senior. So I kind of just applied through a bunch of companies through my own on-campus recruiting. So it made it very easy for me in terms of like, I didn't feel like I was on my own that often. And it was good because a lot of my interviews were like, I would be able to do them at the on-campus recruiting center and stuff like that. And that's actually how I got my internship at Facebook my summer after junior year. And then this kind of translated to a return offer, which I actually signed for my first full-time offer coming out of college. And that's one of the other realizations I had, that it was really nice doing an internship that I think I was kind of a little confident that I might actually like that junior year summer, because it gives you the best chance of getting a return offer, which gives you something to back up on when you're looking for a full-time job. And I think that was one of the like hardest things, is when you're looking for a job, it's kind of it's like way easier knowing that, hey, like if nothing happens, there's still something that I have in my court. And so it takes away a lot of the stress from it and stuff. So I think that was like a big benefit of doing a good internship that junior summer.
You touched on a lot of things, Roman, so really appreciate that. That was really good. Megha, you and I both know you had kind of a longer path during and post-college. So tell us just a little bit about how you got to your anesthesiology residency at Cleveland Clinic and what it took for you to get here.
Yeah, Suryaraj has been there from the beginning. Wow. Yeah, the path to medicine is certainly long, but definitely a rewarding one if that's something you're interested in. College was a very busy time for me, but also the most uniquely memorable time of my life. I was a chemistry major and a psychology minor. Graduate schools, especially medical schools, obviously look at performance in the academic realm. And for me, it was really, really important to pick something that I was passionate about and really enjoyed to be able to succeed and get that good GPA. So for anyone considering health sciences, don't feel like it's necessary to pick a particular major to demonstrate your interest. Just pick something that you're gonna really enjoy and as a result do really well in. I was also involved in a lot of clubs and organizations on campus that I was genuinely passionate about. I love graphic design and marketing, so I was involved in PR efforts for YJA as the director of PR and as a PR co-chair for one of the conventions, and organizations on campus like Relay for Life, Dance Marathon, and our South Asian Student Association. While I was involved in these organizations because I truly loved these communities, I think it helped demonstrate to medical schools my diverse interests and leadership abilities. During my time in college, I also volunteered and scribed at a local free clinic and a local emergency department. This was the best exposure you can get to the medical field, and it really helped convince me that that's what I wanted to do. In the future, it also helped demonstrate to medical schools my interest in medicine. I was also involved in a biochemistry research lab group for all 4 years of college. I was very, very lucky to find a research PI and a lab group that really made research such a fun experience. We had the best times. And I think in terms of medical school applications, this highlighted my scientific curiosity, my dedication to getting a project done, my analytical skills. So overall, I think college is one of the best times to explore new interests and find what you're really passionate about. And if you're considering graduate school, particularly medical school, think about how you can cultivate and demonstrate to graduate schools your interests, hobbies, leadership skills, your inquisitiveness, and your academic abilities. Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more about college being a great place to explore things. I remember I changed my major 4 times before I decided on my final major. So totally agree with that. And props to you for going through that whole long process, and to anybody who's thinking about the same path as well. So Mishi, you also kind of had a little bit of a longer path going from Rice to Stanford. What made you get into law, and what made you take this career path, and what sort of opportunities did you come across during college that led you to become an attorney?
Yeah, happy to talk about this. So for as long as I can remember, even as a little kid, I wanted to be a lawyer. I'd always loved the idea of justice and advocating for people. And it was a concept in the beginning, but it became much more real for me when I went to college. The thing about law, which is interesting, and it can be good and bad, is that you don't have to do a specific major. You don't have to have any specific experiences before you seek out law school. Like many of my classmates were people who had studied engineering or neuroscience in undergrad, and then there were people who did the more typical political science, public policy route, which is the route I went. But I think that also opens a door for you to really take advantage of college and seek out opportunities that you're interested in. The other interesting thing about law is that it's very hard to get legal experiences while in college without actually having a law degree, because you just simply can't do the legal work without having that toolkit. So I went about this by looking for opportunities that were law adjacent. For me, that meant public policy and government related opportunities, which I was also very passionate about. So there are a few things that I explored in college that really helped solidify my interest in law. The first thing was that my college had an on-campus think tank. And those are sort of public policy research institutes. So I got to engage and do public policy research really early on, I think even as a freshman, looking at sort of like the rates of women politicians in different cities and things like that. Sorry, I got muted there. Yeah, so think tanks was a really cool opportunity, and that was available to me on campus. I also sought out other opportunities. So I did an externship with a judge in California and a judge in Houston as well. And I got to shadow them, got to see what their day-to-day was like, work with other people in their chambers, and that was great to get the judicial perspective on things. And I think the most formative experience I had was my first summer in Washington, D.C., was with the White House Initiative on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. It was through a program that was for South Asian Americans interested in public service. And that summer really changed my life and showed me that I was very interested in public policy in the world of DC, and having a positive impact on people and like advocating for people. So I think like there are lots of opportunities like that that are law adjacent, that you can explore in college and already start getting a feel for what you like and what you don't like. And what the cool thing about a lot of these policy internships or government internships is that there will be a lot of lawyers there, a lot of lawyers who have transitioned out of traditional legal jobs, and those are really great people to talk to. So yeah, those are some of the experiences I had.
So what you're telling me is that the show Suits did not really convince you to become a lawyer.
It definitely played a meaningful role. I have to say being a lawyer is not exactly like that, but it's not too far apart.
That's fair. That's fair. Just a little follow-up. You talked about a lot of these experiences. Do you mind just expanding upon the White House Initiative, as well as you working for the U.S. District Courts, and just that, talking about more about that experience and how are you able to find that opportunity in such a really hard to find job area in DC, really?
Sure. So I'll start with the district court experience in college. So I wasn't a law clerk at the time. I was just a college student. And my college had started a law government fellowship kind of experience. And so they would help pair you. You would apply, and then if you got in, they would help pair you with different judges. And you would just intern there during the semester. You would go after classes, or before classes still work out a schedule. But that was a really, really neat opportunity because you got to be, it's very uncommon for college students to get in that early. If your college doesn't have that kind of experience, I would say don't hesitate to create experiences, which is what I did with a lot of my experiences. I would cold email people. That's how I got a job at a law firm in high school randomly. But I mean, don't hesitate to cold email like, you know, judges, judicial assistants if you're interested, and just be polite, like, hey, I'm interested, I'm really passionate about the law, I'd love to be involved. If I can just shadow you even for a week. So that was that experience. The White House Initiative experience was through a program called the Washington Leadership Program. So that was directed towards helping South Asian Americans interested in public service get their foot in DC and experience what it's like to work for a federal agency or work on the Hill in Congress. And so I would say that there are several other identity-based programs that are really trying to help diverse college kids get their foot into DC. So the WLP is just one of them. There are several others through organizations called the Congressional Asian American Caucus has one, OCA National, I'm just naming a few. If you Google Asian American internships in DC. So I would say don't hesitate to look for opportunities like that are identity-based, women internships, Asian American internships, anything else, or a specific area you're interested in. There are lots of programs like that. And the benefits of those is that sometimes they'll help you get funding as well. They'll help you with internships, and they'll help you meet really, really cool people. And there's a great network here in DC, especially of like South Asian American lawyers and people in the White House and in government. And so everyone's really invested in helping you succeed. So I'm happy to chat more with anyone who's interested, but definitely look out for those kinds of opportunities.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that, Mishi. I'm sure, you know, considering Suits is a top 10 show right now on Netflix, I wouldn't be surprised if a bunch of our attendees here have some questions regarding that field. So moving on to you, Purva, you're basically following the same undergrad path that I did as well in college, being an information systems and supply chain management undergrad student. So just tell me kind of what sort of internships do you typically look for being in this path, and how did you land your current position at or internship at Rolls-Royce?
Yeah, no, I guess I'm happy to speak to what I've done. I was taking notes as Rohit was talking because I was like recruiting for now, I guess, going into junior year. But yeah, I guess chronologically, going into freshman year, I recruited too late for an internship. I ended up with like a part-time job at a marketing consulting firm, but yeah, that was, I think, the thing that I didn't quite catch was that coming in, I don't know, your career services center will tell you it's okay if you don't have an internship your freshman year, and it is okay, like do your own thing, do whatever you want, but you can get one. If you want one, you can get one. You just have to be on top of it. And the resources, if they're not with your career services center, are there if you just cold apply, which I guess is how I got my Rolls-Royce offer. The fun thing about being in information systems and supply chain management was just like supply chain exists everywhere. So anytime I thought of a company, I could just like look them up, look up internships, see when they came out, if they were out, and just like apply. So I would say that was a big way. And then I think my professors, I think I had a professor actually recommend me Rolls-Royce, and she like interned there, her like first internship ever. And she was like, you mentioned aerospace. And I was like, I thought they made cars, but yeah. So I would say, yeah, people around you, and then cold apply. Yeah, no damage done. I think if you cold apply, then getting your resume to be just really good, so you avoid getting it filtered out through that auto run, is kind of important. But yeah, at least speaking to your freshman and sophomore year, you can also in-person recruit. I think it becomes easier to go to like career fairs and stuff. But yeah, I guess I'll see for my junior year. I guess I've learned that you just have to constantly recruit. Like there will be an application out. Even like now they're open for next summer, or they're even closing. So just constantly recruiting. And then I guess as far as like what internships to apply for, I think this varies depending on what your major is. Obviously, freshman year, take what you can get. I think I would have taken anything that wasn't sales, but I would have, just for fun, like experience is experience. And if not that, I think projects are fun. Softwares, like anything you can like get certified in is a good activity. So now I guess based on those softwares, I look for skills. I like to operate in like that midpoint where a CS major can't take my job. So there's like no super heavy coding involved, but still data analytics, like business insights role is fun. And then anything that mentions any like supply chain buzzword is a good time. And I think the other thing that avoids getting you filtered out of those systems is having those words, that software or like Lean Six Sigma or whatever that is on your resume somewhere. As well, yeah, I would say those are like the key pieces that so far have guided me to where I am now. Still going though.
No, really appreciate it, Purva. I think it's something really unique about this major is that you can go in several different directions and, still be like, hey, okay, that's interesting, but also this is interesting. I can do multiple things. So really appreciate that insight, especially, you still being in college right now. That helps a lot. But wanted to thank you to all four of you for all that insightful information you gave us about how future college students can land career opportunities. It's not an easy task to do because, going to college brings a lot of changes. Sometimes it's really hard being away from home and family while trying to stay connected to our culture, our friends and other families that we're away from, and of course, our Jainism roots. And to kind of talk about ways to stay connected to Jainism, we have Aksho and Garima with us today. And so Aksho, I'll start with you, a real quick question here, just to start off. If you could just give a quick introduction about yourself, what you've been up to these days.
Yeah, definitely. So Jai Jinder, everyone. My name is Akshal Shah. I'm going to be a rising junior at Baruch College in New York City, majoring in finance with a minor in advanced business analysis and French. Yeah, so great to be here and love to talk to you guys about my experiences.
Hi, everybody. Jai Jinder. My name is Garima Shah. I'm going to be a rising senior at the University of Michigan. I'm studying computer science with a minor in the multidisciplinary program. And this summer, I'm a software engineering intern at JP Morgan in Chicago.
Awesome. Thank you both for your intro. Akshal, I'll start with you. Despite the fact that there's no youth Jain organization at Baruch College and that you live away from home, how do you stay involved at your Sangh and how do you practice Jainism in day-to-day life or during Paryushan, Dasalakshan, or any other Jain holidays?
Yeah, definitely. I think staying away from home has definitely been a very different experience. I guess starting off on like the religious route, right? I couldn't go to the Deras every Sunday like I used to with my parents. But at the same time, I knew that I didn't want to kind of completely stray away from my Jain roots. And it was really tough in the beginning, kind of finding that right balance between what Jain activities to keep practicing, what not to practice, what's difficult to practice. And fortunately for me, I was only an hour train ride away from the Derasar. And I had been kind of volunteering for a couple of years before then. So a lot of like the uncles and aunties at the Derasar knew me as well. So I was actually kind of able to kind of use that to my favor because then whenever they needed help with a big event, Mahavir Jayanti, Swapna Darshan, et cetera, right? Like they would always just like, one of them would text me or call me like, hey, like we're having this event. We need someone to help out with tech, or we need someone to help out with like setting up lighting or whatever. And someone would reach out to me. And most of the time, if I was free, I had the time, I would pretty much go and help out with whatever they needed. And I think that was just kind of a big part of me growing up. Like the Derasar was always a huge part of what I did, where I think a lot of my experiences, and I was able to gain so much from it. So it was a very big part of kind of who I was, just to go out and be willing to kind of offer that help back to the Derasar. And kind of switching gears really like practicing Jainism on the day-to-day in college. I try to practice some like the routine stuff that I did at home. So I had a little picture of Bhagwan in my room that I did darshan to every morning. And I kept on going with not eating onion, garlic, or potatoes. And again, kind of core values that I grew up with and something that I knew I personally wanted to kind of maintain moving forward. So despite as daunting and difficult that it was in the beginning, it was something that I was like, I'm going to go on with because it's just a part of who I am. And it was hard. It was very hard in the beginning. Baruch doesn't really have, our college campus is like 2 buildings, maybe. It's in the middle of New York City. So there's no dining hall, there's no cafeteria, none of that. So it was a little difficult. There's no one I could speak to about food or anything like that. But I kind of took some of the tips that Rahi actually gave earlier about talking to seniors, talking to other people that I knew that went to Baruch, and just figured out kind of how to craft myself Jain food every time, or bringing home food from home. So Eventually it all works out. I think a huge part of it is just adaptation. And then just coming to Jain holidays, I think it's definitely a very different way of kind of celebrating. You can't celebrate Paryushan the same way that you would at home or back in the Derasar. So again, it kind of comes all back around to adaptation, doing the most that you can with the time, the location, your schedule. And there are days during Paryushan that I couldn't do anything because of a busy schedule or something. And there's some days that I would try doing at the bare minimum, just not eating at night. And there were some days that I had no work, no classes that day, and I did no +1. So I think it really just depends on kind of what time you have your schedule, and then just making the most out of what values are most important to you from Jainism, and then implementing those in whatever way that you can to practice as much or as little of it as possible based off your schedule.
No, that's awesome, man. You touched upon the fact that, it's not easy. It can be difficult, but you still stay with it, which is, really props to you for being able to do that. Grima, a little birdie told me that you helped restart the Jain Student Association at the University of Michigan. So I just wanted to kind of hear about your involvement in JSA, how it helped you stay close to your Jain roots despite being physically far away from home and your Jain community. And then another follow-up question to that would just be, has there ever been a time that you felt homesick? And if so, how did you kind of get through it?
Yeah, so I did help restart JSA at UMich. And I think like one of the coolest things about that was at the end of last semester, like we were planning this event and we were like, okay, like, me and one of my other co-presidents, we got coffee. We were just like trying to figure out like, how do we market this thing? And so we went to our Instagram, we went to like, we have like a main pages, which is like a campus thing, just like trying to see who followed us, like how many people we thought we could like dig up that might be Jain or might be interested. I mass emailed about like 55 to 60 people. And I didn't realize that there was that many like Jain students on campus, and actually like the mass emailing worked. So if anyone wants to use that trick, I would say it works. But there's a lot of students that like didn't know that there was this many other Jain students, or that like, what YJA was, because they were international students or things like that. So I think like one of the biggest benefits of being involved in JSA has been a chance for me to give back to the Jain community, like kind of similar to what Akshal said. Like I grew up at the Derasar. JSMC was 10 minutes from my house. I was there during festivals, on random days, during the weekends. Like you usually found me there. And the community gave me a lot. So by kind of building that community on campus, I think it helped me stay closer to like having that community feeling of like, hey, like this is kind of our own little mini like college song type of thing. And I think when I got homesick, it was really nice because I got close to a lot of people because of that like live really close. So for Yushin, for Diwali, like their parents would take them to the temple. So my friends would always offer if I wanted to go with. I think that helped a lot. And I think one of the other things that Akshal said, like having those routines that I followed at home kind of like translate to my college life. Maybe they translated a little bit differently, but just the fact that they translated helped me kind of feel like I was living in my own little home bubble. So like having a picture and like doing darshan, attending YJA events, whether they were virtual, whether it was Midwest retreat, and just seeing some of those people, I think also really just helped me.
Awesome. It's really so awesome to hear that you're able to restart and JSA, and then be able to make that kind of your family, kind of like a little Derasar, like you said, during college. So that's really great. Akshal, this is a question for you. You were and still heavily involved with YJA, during your time in college. Could you just talk a little bit more about your experience? Just whether being an LR or being a committee member or being on board, and how you were able to manage that during college, and just how it kind of helped you sticking with your Jain roots.
Yeah, definitely. So I was a PR subcommittee member I think my senior year of high school, and then I've been an LR 3 years after that. So Yeah, so I've been both an LR and a PR subco member, and I think both those experiences have been truly amazing in every which aspect. So I've met lifelong friends, mentors, really a second family, honestly. I look forward to our Monday night LR calls, go Bunchika, go Mid-Atlantic, and just getting ready to kind of like relax, talk with everyone while also planning events for the region. It's also a lot of fun just kind of being at those events after. So whether it was winter retreat or summer retreat, and kind of getting to plan those, see what goes on in the back end. And I think making a whole bunch of lifelong friends that you're on the phone with every Monday night for an hour, and then playing games with for another hour after that. Truly a lot of fun. And then going back to my experience on PR subco. So I'm a finance major. PR, not really my thing, not really my expertise. And I kind of just joined PR subco my senior year of high school, just because I want to explore something new. It was senior year, I finished college apps, kind of nothing better to do. So I was like, let me give this a try. And I learned so much out of it. It's actually really funny kind of how experiences and skills in life will just like connect from one thing to another. It's actually just last year, actually, a hedge fund club that I'm a part of at school was struggling to find a marketing lead. And until we kind of found someone, I was able to step in for a week or two and toss out a couple LinkedIn posts and Instagram posts for the club. And that was primarily because of Canva that I learned to use because of PR subco. Without that, I probably never have heard of Canva, right? So I think definitely some amazing experiences. And a lot of these subco teams span across a number of different sectors, whether it's tech, PR, podcasts, et cetera, right? So I think there's always something for someone, whether it's something that you want to add to your resume or something you just want to try something new. There's a whole bunch of experiences. And I think at first it's a little daunting thinking about, oh my God, how am I going to practice something? How am I going to fit something new with my schedule? I'm already so busy with classes, et cetera. But as Garima said, it's all about kind of building that community. It's all about just like, you miss people from your local community or you're there, right? And this is like a very easy way to kind of find friends that are from the same background. They miss a lot of the same things you missed, right? They're doing a lot of the same things you do. They're watching the same sports or whatever, right? Like you have a lot of similarities with these people. So it's very easy to kind of make friends with them. And it's not much of a time commitment. It's very flexible as well. So I'd highly, highly, highly encourage it to anyone that is interested.
I couldn't agree more. I definitely kind of lost touch with my Jains roots as well and joined the committees. And that's the reason why, I'm able to just get back to what I was doing when I was more committed back when I was much younger, actually. So really, awesome. Thank you both for sharing your thoughts on kind of how our, future college students can stay connected with Jainism. Really appreciate that. And I'm sure our audience present today has thought about this a lot. So that was really helpful, both of you. Thank you. Before we move on to our next part of this webinar, we want to let our attendees know about YJA's first ever scholarship competition. This competition is open to all high school seniors and college entering students who are planning on receiving a bachelor's or associate's degree. We definitely encourage all of you to apply who fit that criteria. And this is really a great way to showcase your application of Jainism in day-to-day life, your community involvement, and just overall accomplishments so far. Then there will be 3 categories to this. It will be merit-based, essay-based, and impact-based, with each scholarship being a total of $1,000 each. So we've dropped the link in the Zoom chat for more information about the scholarship and how you can apply. So don't hesitate to reach out to any of us regarding any questions or concerns you might have. With that, I'll go ahead and hand it off to Akshat, who will explain our breakout sessions.
Hey everyone, Jai Janendra. We want to thank all of the panelists for taking the time to share their experiences with us all today. Your insights and wisdom have been invaluable to us all. We will now be setting up the breakout rooms on Zoom. And your options are campus life and involvement, professional opportunities, and staying connected to Jainism. We also ask that you fill out a Google form asking for feedback on this webinar today, which is also available in the Zoom chat.